This is my true story. I worked, I saved, and I sacrificed. Every coin I earned, I put aside for my son. I lived small so that one day he could live large. I thought loyalty ran both ways. I thought blood would protect what I built. But one morning, the banker called me in. He slid a paper across the desk. One receipt. My son's name. My son's hand. A withdrawal I never made. 30 years of sacrifice, gone in seconds. My heart froze. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and please subscribe so more people hear my story. I was never a rich man. My life was built on work, not comfort. Every morning I woke before the sun, tied my boots, and walked to jobs that paid little but kept food on the table. The other men I worked beside spent their wages quickly. They bought new coats, radios, and bottles of drink. I did not. Every extra dollar, every coin I did not need to survive, I saved. I placed it carefully into an account. Not for me. For him. My son. I wanted him to have a life I never touched. When my shoes wore thin, I patched them instead of buying new. When my coat lost buttons, I sewed it by hand. I skipped meals when times were hard, eating bread and soup so that the rest of the money could be hidden away. I counted coins by candlelight. I folded notes into envelopes marked with his name. People laughed at me for living poor when I had money in the bank. They never understood. My dream was not to shine in public. My dream was to see him safe when I was gone. I worked long hours in factories where the noise never stopped. I lifted heavy boxes until my back bent. I mopped floors when others slept. The pay was never much, but I always told myself, one more week, one more deposit. It will grow. And it did. The balance rose, slow but steady, like a tree planted in poor soil but watered every day. When other fathers spent weekends at the tavern, I sat at home and counted what I had set aside. I imagined him older, walking into the bank one day and finding the gift of his father's life's work waiting for him. I pictured the relief on his face when he realized he would never worry about rent, food, or debt. That thought was enough for me. That thought made the hunger easier. Even when I was sick, even when my body begged for rest, I worked. I told myself, he is worth it. Every pill I skipped buying, every doctor I avoided, every small comfort I denied myself, all of it went into that account. The savings became my shadow. My son never saw me as a man with anything. He saw an old coat, worn boots, a simple house. But hidden behind those walls was a future waiting for him. A future I never touched. I never traveled. I never bought a car. I never took vacations. My life was not about myself. It was about him. The neighbors sometimes shook their heads and said, "You cannot take money to the grave." They were right. But I was not trying to. I was preparing it for his hands. I was giving him what I could never give myself: freedom. The sacrifice was not only in money. It was in years. Years where I could have lived lighter, laughed more, and enjoyed what little I earned. Instead, I carried the weight of tomorrow for him. My heart was proud, even when my body was tired. My heart told me it was worth it. My son would never struggle the way I struggled. He would stand on solid ground because I built it for him. Every time I looked at him, I reminded myself, keep saving. Every time he smiled, I thought, this is why I live without. The account was my proof of love. I thought he knew that. I thought he would see it one day and understand the depth of what I had done for him. I thought loyalty was in his blood as much as mine. For 30 years I lived like that. 30 years of patched shoes, skipped meals, long shifts, and quiet deposits. 30 years of sacrifice. All for him. I believed in him. I believed in the account. I believed my effort was building a wall around his future. I believed my son would one day thank me. I was wrong. When the balance grew, I began to feel proud. It was not much to the world, but to me, it was the sum of a life. Every line in the passbook was a story of sacrifice. I thought it was time to show him. My son was no longer a boy. He was grown, with his own house, his own wife, his own pride. I believed he would be ready to understand what I had done. So one evening, I called him to the table. I set the passbooks down in front of him. I said, This is for you. I have saved my whole life for this. Every dollar here is meant for you." His eyes widened. He turned the pages slowly, seeing the balances, seeing the careful hand of years. I thought I saw respect in his face. I thought I saw gratitude. He smiled and said, "Thank you, Dad." That was all. I thought it was enough. I taught him then how to use the account. I showed him how deposits worked. I told him how to avoid debt. I told him never to spend what you cannot replace. He nodded. He agreed. He promised. I believed his words. I wanted to believe. After all, he was my son, blood of my blood. Why would he betray me? I handed him the passbooks when I grew older. I said, "Take care of this. It is not just money. It is my life's work. It is everything I could give." He held them in his hands. He said, "I will, Dad. You can trust me," and I did. I trusted him without doubt. I thought I had taught him well. I thought he had my discipline. I thought he had my respect for sacrifice. He began to handle the accounts. I stopped going to the bank as often. My legs were weak, my back hurt, my eyes dimmed. I let him go in my place. I thought it was the natural way of life. The father steps back, the son steps forward. I felt comfort, not fear. Comfort that what I built would stay safe in his hands. Sometimes I asked him about the money. He always smiled. He said, "It's safe, Dad. Don't worry." He patted my shoulder and laughed. I felt pride in his confidence. I mistook that confidence for love. I mistook that smile for honesty. I mistook his silence for respect. I never checked too closely. Why would I? To me, trust was natural. I gave him life, food, a home, and savings. He owed me nothing but care. I thought that bond was stronger than paper. I thought family was stronger than greed. I thought love could not be broken by numbers. But the truth was hiding. Every time I placed the passbook in his hands, I gave him not only access, but power. Every time I let him walk into the bank alone, I let him test his loyalty. I never imagined he would fail. I never imagined he would look at money and see temptation stronger than blood. I never imagined my son would see my life's work not as a gift, but as a prize to take. For years, I lived in that trust, blind, proud, at peace. I thought I had secured his future. In truth, I had placed my sacrifice in the hands of a thief I still called my son. The day came without warning. It was a winter morning, cold and gray. I was sitting by the window with my tea when the phone rang. It was the bank. The banker's voice was low, slower than usual. He said, "Sir, can you come in? There is something you need to see." His words carried a weight that made my stomach turn. I asked if it was about my account. He said yes. I asked if it was safe. He did not answer at once. That silence was the first crack in my trust. I dressed slowly, pulling on my old coat and worn shoes. I walked through the cold streets to the bank, every step heavy. Inside, the banker greeted me with a face that looked sorry, but firm. He led me to his desk. He did not smile. He did not offer small talk. He simply opened a folder, pulled out a piece of paper, and slid it across to me. It was a receipt. A single slip of paper, no larger than my hand. But it carried more weight than a mountain. My son's name was signed in bold ink. My son's hand had written it. And beneath it was the number, a withdrawal, a sum so large it made my chest tighten. It was money I had never touched, money I had saved with sweat and hunger. Gone. I stared at it, hoping I was wrong. I asked the banker if there had been a mistake. He shook his head slowly. "This is real," he said. "It was withdrawn last week." My lips moved, but no words came. My fingers trembled as I held the paper. I read the date again and again. My son had taken it. My son had betrayed me. The banker looked at me with pity. He said he was sorry. But pity did not help. Sorry did not help. Nothing could return the years I had given to that account. 30 years of extra hours, 30 years of patched clothes, 30 years of skipped meals. All taken with one signature, my son's signature. I walked out of the bank with the receipt in my pocket. The cold wind cut through my coat, but I barely felt it. My body was numb, my heart was ice. Each step felt like stone. I could not believe what I had seen, yet the paper in my pocket was proof. It burned against my chest like fire, but at the same time it froze me. I thought of every time I had trusted him, every smile, every "don't worry, Dad," every promise he made, lies, empty words covering greed. I thought of the years I lived poor so he could live safe. I thought of the shoes I patched, the meals I skipped, the coins I counted in the dark, all of it gone in a moment. Not by a stranger, by my own blood, by the son I raised. That day, something inside me broke, but something else hardened. My heart froze, yes, but in the ice was a new resolve. If he could take everything I had built with one receipt, then I would answer him with more than anger. I would answer him with silence, strategy, and finality. I walked home with the receipt in my pocket, and every step felt like a grave being dug under me. The street was the same, the houses were the same, but the world was different now. My chest was heavy, my breath short, my hands shaking. Yet at the same time, something strange happened inside me. My anger did not boil like fire. It froze. My blood slowed. My mind turned to ice. I felt cold, sharper than winter itself. That was the moment I knew the man I trusted as my son was gone. Only a thief remained wearing his face. I sat down in my chair and pulled out the receipt again. My eyes traced the letters of his name. My own son's hand. Bold, careless, greedy. He had not even tried to hide it. He thought I would never see. He thought I was too old, too weak, too trusting. That arrogance cut deeper than the theft itself. He believed he could take my life's work and I would never know. He believed I was blind. He believed I was finished. That belief was his first mistake. I thought back to every sacrifice, every pair of shoes I wore until holes showed. Every night I worked late and came home too tired to eat. Every time I folded a small note into the account instead of spending it on myself. I thought of how many times I turned away from comfort so that he could one day live easy. And then I looked again at the paper. 30 years of my pain, stolen in seconds. My fingers tightened on the receipt until it crumpled. I wanted to shout. I wanted to weep. But no sound came out of me. The silence inside was louder than any scream. My heart, once warm with dreams of his future, had turned to stone. Cold, hard, unbreakable. The love I had carried for decades froze in that moment. A father's heart can break, but it can also turn to ice. I looked around the room at the simple things I still owned. The old lamp. The patched chair. The coat hanging on the wall. These things had been my pride because they proved my sacrifice. Now they mocked me. They whispered that I had lived poor while my son lived rich off my back. They whispered that I had saved for him while he laughed behind my back. They whispered the truth. I had been a fool. But a fool who wakes becomes dangerous. That receipt was not just proof of betrayal. It was a weapon. It was the start of my plan. My pulse slowed. My mind cleared. In that frozen silence, I promised myself something. He would never touch another cent of mine again. He had stolen once. He thought he had won. He thought I was weak. But I would show him the strength of an old man who has lost everything and has nothing left to fear. The freezing moment is when a man no longer begs. The freezing moment is when pain turns to purpose. I sat in my chair, holding that paper, and I felt the years of sacrifice behind me and the years of betrayal ahead of me. The warmth was gone. The dream was gone. All that remained was the ice, and the ice gave me clarity. That was the day my heart froze forever. I walked into the house that evening with the receipt folded tight in my pocket. My son was there, sitting at the table, laughing with his wife. He looked up at me like nothing had happened. He smiled. He asked how my day was. His voice was light, careless, as if the world was normal. But in my mind, the world had ended. My eyes stayed on him. I said nothing. My silence filled the room heavier than any answer could. He leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed, his grin wide. He did not know. He thought I was still blind, still trusting. He thought the old man had no clue. He asked if I needed money for groceries. I shook my head once, slow. I did not speak. He laughed, carefree, like he was generous. My hands clenched under the table. He was offering me money he had stolen from me. The insult burned, but I held my silence. All through dinner, I watched him. Every word out of his mouth felt false. Every laugh felt sharp. He chewed his food without care, while I chewed on the truth in my mind. He looked like my son, but he was not. He was a stranger now, a thief in my home. I kept my eyes cold, and still he did not notice. He thought silence meant weakness. He thought silence meant ignorance. He was wrong. After the meal, he leaned over and patted my shoulder. "Don't worry, Dad. Everything is safe." Those words almost made me laugh. Safe? Safe because he had taken it? Safe because he believed I would never know? My chest tightened, but my mouth stayed shut. I nodded, slow, deliberate. My eyes never left his face. I wanted him to see something different in my stare, but he was too blind with greed to notice. His wife smirked at me once, whispering something in his ear. He chuckled. I knew then that she was part of it. Maybe not in paper, maybe not in signature, but in spirit. She knew. She enjoyed. That made my silence even colder. I spoke no word to either of them. Silence was my shield. Silence was my weapon. They laughed while I planned. That night I sat in my room, the receipt spread out on the table under the lamp. I stared at his name again. My son. My blood. Yet not my family anymore. The paper was proof of betrayal, but his smile, his laughter, his careless pats on my shoulder, that was the proof of his cruelty. He had not only stolen my money, he had stolen my trust, my years, my sacrifice. He had turned me into the fool he mocked in silence. But he did not know that the fool was awake. He did not know the fool had turned cold. He did not know that every word he spoke dug his own grave deeper. I said nothing because silence is heavier than shouting. Words can be denied, silence cannot. Silence is noticed too late. I looked at him one last time before I went to bed. He was still laughing, still certain, still blind. I walked past him without a word. He did not even turn his head. That was fine. I wanted him to feel the weight of my silence later, when the cards stopped, when the accounts froze, when the ground he stood on collapsed under him. Then he would remember the night his father looked him in the eye and said nothing. That was the night I knew I would never shout, I would never argue, I would never strike him. My revenge would be cold, it would be quiet, it would be final. The next morning I woke before the sun. I did not eat, I did not drink. I only dressed, folded the receipt into my pocket, and walked back to the bank. My son was still asleep, dreaming that his theft was safe. He thought I would remain blind, but I was already moving. The bank was quiet, only a few early workers inside. I asked to see the manager. He looked surprised when I placed the receipt on his desk. I told him, "That is my son's name. That is not my hand. He has taken what was not his to take." The manager looked at me with careful eyes. He nodded slowly. He asked what I wanted done. I spoke in low, steady words. "Freeze every account he can touch. Transfer the rest into my name alone. Make sure no coin of mine reaches his hands again." The manager called clerks. Papers were brought. I signed form after form, my hand firm though my body trembled. Each stroke of the pen was like a wall going up between me and him. Each signature was a lock closing forever. I watched the clerks stamp the papers, their small motions heavier than iron chains. My son had used one signature to steal. I was using 10 to shut him out for life. I opened new accounts that only I could control. No shared names, no linked cards, no back doors. I asked the bank to move what remained into those accounts. They worked in silence. The hum of machines filled the room. Numbers shifted, balances changed, screens updated. What little I still had was pulled from his reach. What he thought was his forever slipped away. I asked the manager to send alerts to me only, to block every attempt by him to act in my name. The manager agreed. He looked at me with quiet respect, perhaps pity too, but I did not need pity. I needed finality. Pity warms. Finality is cold, and cold is what I had become. When the work was finished, I folded the new papers into my coat. My coat felt heavier, but stronger. I walked out of the bank into the daylight. The sky was gray, but inside me there was no storm. Only ice. My son still thought he had beaten me. He still thought I would never know. But the truth was already written. He had stolen once, but he would never steal again. On the way home, I passed children playing in the street. Their laughter rang out, free and light. I wondered what they would grow into. Would they betray the hands that raised them? Would they remember the faces that fed them? Or would they learn respect? My heart was heavy but also clear. A son without respect is worse than a stranger. At home, he asked me where I had been. I looked at him. I said nothing. I hung my coat. He smiled, thinking he still carried the secret. But the secret was already broken. I had locked the doors he did not even know were closed. His pride was still full, but the ground beneath him was already gone. That day taught me a truth I had never wanted to learn. Sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is strategy. While he laughed, I was building walls around what was left. While he boasted, I was cutting him out piece by piece. While he lived blind, I was sharpening my resolve. My son had stolen the past, but I was stealing the future back from him. The bank work was only the beginning. Money can move quickly, but names last longer. I knew if I stopped at freezing accounts, he would still expect to inherit everything when I was gone. He would still believe the world would bend for him one last time. That thought made me colder. It was not enough to block his hands today. I needed to erase his future. So I went to the lawyer, the same man who had once explained trusts and deeds to me years ago. He remembered me when I walked in. He asked if I had come to update my will. I nodded. He offered coffee. I did not take it. I only said, I want my son's name gone. Every line, every place, every right, erased. The lawyer looked at me carefully. He asked if I was sure. I pulled the receipt from my coat and placed it on his desk. He read the name, the date, the amount. He said nothing more. He understood. Betrayal does not need many words. The proof spoke louder than any story. He opened his files. He drew up fresh papers. He asked who I wanted as heirs now. I thought for a long moment. Then I spoke. Not him. Not his wife. Not anyone tied to his blood. If I die, let it go to those who respected me. A neighbor who helped me shovel snow. A worker who never mocked me. A small charity that gives bread to the hungry. Strangers have shown me more kindness than my own son. They will hold my name when I am gone. The lawyer nodded. He wrote as I spoke. Each line cut my son out. Each new name built a future without him. I watched the ink dry on the page. I signed with steady hand. My son had stolen once, thinking he won. But in truth, I had taken everything back. His theft was a single moment. My revenge would last forever, written in law. The lawyer stamped the pages. He slid them into a folder. He looked at me and said, "It is done. It cannot be undone without your word, and I know you will not give it." I nodded once. My silence was my answer. I did not need to speak. I did not need to explain. The paper would speak for me when I was gone. I walked out of the office lighter, though the cold was still in me. My son did not know that day that his name had been cut away. He still walked around proud, believing he had secured his future with one stolen withdrawal. He did not know his inheritance was ash. He did not know that when I left this world, he would receive nothing. Not the money, not the house, not the land, nothing. At dinner that night, he laughed again. He boasted about a new purchase. His wife giggled beside him. I sat silent, chewing my food slowly. He thought silence meant weakness. He thought he had broken me. But inside, I was calm. He did not know that every bite I took that evening was a reminder. The ink was dry, his name erased, his future gone. That was my hidden revenge. Quiet, legal, permanent. He could not fight it. He could not undo it. He would not even know until it was too late. And by then, he would learn what betrayal costs. The day of exposure came on its own. I did not plan it with noise. I did not gather people or shout in the street. Life brought it forward like a storm cloud that cannot be stopped. My son came to me one afternoon, his voice sharp, his face pale. He was not laughing now. Creditors had come to his door. Banks were calling for payments. His wife was no longer smiling. He looked at me with desperation, not pride. He said, "Dad, I need help. You have money. You always saved. Lend me something, just until I clear this debt." I listened in silence. For a moment I saw the boy he once was, small, helpless, running to me for help after a fall. But this was no boy. This was a grown man who had already betrayed me. My heart stayed cold. I stood, walked to the drawer, and pulled out the paper that had never left my side. The receipt, his name, his hand, the proof of his theft. I did not speak. I walked to the table and placed the receipt down in front of him, the same way the banker had placed it before me. I slid it across the wood. He picked it up, confused at first. Then his eyes froze. His face drained of color. He read the date. He saw his own signature. His lips moved, but no sound came. He tried to speak. "Dad, it's not what it looks like." But his words fell weak. Lies have no weight when the truth is printed in ink. I said nothing. I only looked at him with eyes colder than stone. My silence told him everything. He knew I had seen. He knew I had known all along. He knew the game was over. His hands shook. He dropped the paper and pushed it back toward me. His eyes searched mine for mercy, but there was none left to give. He had taken 30 years of sacrifice and turned it into a joke. Now the joke was on him. The paper that gave him pride once was now his shame. He could not deny it. He could not erase it. It was his own hand that betrayed him. The room was quiet except for his breathing, fast and shallow. His wife came in, saw the paper on the table, and picked it up. Her face twisted. She asked him what it was. He had no answer. She looked at me, but I kept silent. The truth did not need my voice. It was written in his own. He lowered his head, his shoulders slumping. His pride collapsed right there in front of me. The man who once laughed at my patched shoes, who once patted my shoulder and told me not to worry, now sat small, broken, and silent. The weight of one receipt was heavier than all the years I had carried alone. I turned away and left him sitting at the table, the paper still burning in his hands. I did not need to say a word. He knew what he had done. He knew what it cost. He knew he had destroyed the future with his own hand. The exposure was complete. The fallout did not wait. It came fast, like a storm breaking weak walls. Once the receipt was seen, the cracks in his life widened. His wife no longer smiled at him. She no longer walked with her chin high, showing off the life she thought was secure. She looked at him with disgust, with shame, with fear. She packed her bags within days. She did not want to stay with a man who had lied to his own father, stolen from his own blood. She left him standing in the doorway, calling after her, but her ears were deaf. She had seen the proof. She had seen the shame, and shame eats faster than hunger. Friends stopped coming around. He once bragged at parties about how his father always saved, about how he never had to worry because his family had money. Now the same friends avoided his calls. They whispered about him instead. They said, he stole from his own father. They said, he signed away his family's honor. They said, a man like that cannot be trusted. His name, once spoken with respect, became dirt on the lips of neighbors. The creditors pressed harder. The banks sent letters. The phone rang with demands, not greetings. He had thought I would be his safety net. He had thought I would always be there to pull him out. But I had already closed the accounts, already frozen what remained, already removed his name from everything. There was nothing left for him to reach for. Every attempt to climb back was met with the same wall. Silence. He came to me more than once after that day. His steps were slower each time, his voice weaker. The anger that once flashed in his eyes turned into begging. He said, "Dad, please, just a little help. I will change. I will be better." But I had already heard those words before. I remembered his laughter when he thought I did not know. I remembered the smile he wore while the banker's receipt told me the truth. I remembered every sacrifice I had made, every meal skipped, every coin counted, and I remembered how quickly he had thrown it all away. I did not shout. I did not curse. I did not lift my hand in anger. I only gave him silence. Silence sharper than any slap. Silence colder than any winter. He sat there, waiting for a word, waiting for hope. But I had none left to give. My silence told him what he needed to know. He was nothing to me now. Not a son. Not an heir. Not a man I could trust. He had dug his own grave, and I would not pull him out. The house he lived in grew emptier. No laughter, no warmth, no comfort. The walls carried whispers of betrayal. His own shadow betrayed him. At night, he sat alone, holding papers he could not erase, staring at numbers that would never change. His pride, once so loud, became a whisper even he could not bear to hear. He lived, but it was not life. It was survival in the ruins of what he had destroyed himself. And me? I walked lighter. My back felt straighter. My chest carried no shame. The burden of trust that had broken me was gone. My money was safe. My dignity was safe. My future was mine again. I did not laugh, but I did not cry either. I simply lived, free from the chains of betrayal. The fallout belonged to him. It ate his pride, it burned his marriage, it stole his friends, it left him hollow. And all of it came from one paper, one receipt, one choice. He destroyed himself the day he betrayed me. All I did was let the truth speak for itself. The final word is mine, not his, not the banker's, not the whispers of neighbors. Mine. For years I gave him my trust. For years I saved every coin, every note, every drop of sweat. All of it was meant for him. I wanted him to be safe when I was gone. I wanted him to have a life where he did not have to beg, where he did not have to break his back the way I did. I thought that was love. I thought that was duty. I thought that was what a father should do. But love, when given to the wrong heart, becomes poison. My son drank that love and turned it into greed. He thought my silence was weakness. He thought my savings were his to take. He thought betrayal would never be seen. But one receipt proved him wrong. I keep that receipt folded in a drawer now. Not because I need proof. I need no reminder of what he did. I keep it as a lesson. A small, thin paper that carries 30 years of sacrifice, 30 years of trust, 30 years of blind faith. A paper that showed me how fragile love can be when one side decides to crush it. A paper that froze my heart forever. He walks the streets now, alone. I see him sometimes from a distance, his shoulders bent, his eyes lowered. He does not see me. He does not know where I live. I chose silence and distance as my revenge. He may still breathe, but he is not living. He is haunted by his own choice, by the knowledge that he betrayed the one man who gave him everything, and that is punishment heavier than any jail. I live quiet now. My savings are mine alone. I redirected what was left to places where respect lives, where gratitude grows. Not to him, never to him again. He is cut from my will, erased from my plans, wiped from my papers. When I die, his hands will find nothing. No house, no money, no inheritance. Only memories of what he destroyed. That is the justice I chose. Not fire, not fists. Only the steady ink of decisions he can never change. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I regret cutting my own son out of my life. If I regret leaving him with nothing. I answer with silence. Because regret belongs to him, not me. He is the one who lost a father, who lost a future, who lost respect. I only lost an illusion. And losing an illusion is not regret. It is freedom. I gave him my life. I gave him my trust. I gave him everything I owned. He gave me betrayal. And betrayal, is a gift I will never return. My heart froze forever the day I saw that receipt. It has not thawed. It never will. That is the price he left me with. That is the price he must live with too. Final thought. I saved money for him all my life. One slip of paper ended it all, and my heart froze forever.